In the quiet town of Ashford, Massachusetts, nestled among ancient oaks, stood the Hargrove House. Built in the early 1900s, it was a grand, if weathered, structure with a wraparound porch and gabled roof. For years, it had been a source of local legend, often described as the haunted house on Maple Street. In the spring of 2010, a young couple, Emily and Jake, decided to purchase the property, seeing potential in its charm. They were excited to restore it to its former glory and, despite the town's warnings, moved in with dreams of a cozy home. Their first night was filled with excitement. As they settled into their new space, however, a series of peculiar events began. Emily woke at 3 a.m. to the sound of soft sobbing echoing through the hallway. Dismissing it as the wind, she rolled over, but the crying persisted. It was a haunting sound that tugged at her heart. The following days were filled with odd occurrences. Doors would creak open on their own, and shadows flitted just out of sight. Jake laughed it off, attributing it to an old house settling, but Emily felt a deep unease. When they began unpacking boxes in the attic, they discovered a dusty trunk. Inside, they found faded photographs and letters belonging to a girl named Clara, who had lived there in the 1920s. Clara's letters told a tragic tale. She wrote about her loneliness after losing her parents in a fire that had claimed the house's original structure. The last letter was unfinished, abruptly ending with, "I wish I could find a friend." As the weeks wore on, Emily became increasingly attuned to Clara's presence. The crying continued, sometimes replaced by the sound of a child's laughter. One night, while Jake was away on a business trip, Emily heard the laughter echoing from the attic. Gathering her courage, she climbed the stairs, flashlight in hand. In the attic, the air felt thick, almost electric. There, she saw Clara, an ethereal figure in a white dress, her eyes filled with sorrow. Emily's heart raced, but Clara didn't seem threatening. Instead, she pointed to a corner of the room where a small, charred wooden box lay. Trembling, Emily approached and opened it, revealing a delicate music box. As she wound it up, a soft melody filled the room, and Clara smiled faintly. The crying faded, replaced by a gentle warmth that enveloped Emily. In that moment, she understood. Clara wasn't trying to frighten them. She was reaching out for companionship, still trapped in her grief. Over the following weeks, Emily made a point to talk to Clara, acknowledging her presence. Jake noticed the change in the house, an air of peace replacing the unsettling feelings. One night, as they sat on the porch, Emily shared Clara's story with Jake, and they decided to hold a small memorial in her honor. They placed flowers in the attic, lighting a candle and playing the music box. As they did, the atmosphere shifted, as if the house itself was sighing in relief. From that night on, the cries faded into whispers of gratitude. Emily and Jake often felt a gentle breeze pass through the house, and the music box would occasionally play on its own. Though Clara's spirit remained, she no longer seemed lost. She had found a place among them, a quiet guardian of their home. As years passed, the Hargrove House became a place of warmth and laughter, with the couple often sharing Clara's story with visitors. The townsfolk no longer whispered of a haunted house. Instead, they spoke of a home that had embraced its past, transforming sorrow into solace. As the seasons changed in Ashford, the Hargrove House thrived with new life. Emily and Jake filled the home with laughter, hosting gatherings that brought friends and neighbors together. They often included Clara in their stories, sharing the history of the house and the spirit that had become a part of their lives. But as winter approached, a strange tension began to creep back into the atmosphere. Emily noticed the temperature in the house fluctuating dramatically, often dropping suddenly in certain rooms, particularly the attic. On particularly chilly nights, the music box would play softly, its notes echoing through the halls, but the laughter that once filled the air seemed to fade. One evening, as the first snowflakes began to fall, Emily found herself alone in the attic, sorting through old boxes. As she opened one dusty trunk, a small, leather-bound journal tumbled out. It belonged to Clara, and Emily's heart raced as she began to read the fragile pages. The entries revealed a deeper sadness than Emily had initially understood. Clara wrote about her love for her parents, her loneliness, and her desire for a friend. Yet as the years passed, the tone shifted to despair. In her final entry, Clara described a shadow that had started to haunt her, whispering dark thoughts and filling her heart with dread. It seemed that Clara's grief had attracted something malevolent, something that thrived in the shadows of the house. Emily's heart sank. She had thought Clara's spirit was at peace, but now it seemed the past was not as simple as it appeared. The journal hinted at a connection between Clara's tragedy and the fire that had destroyed the original house. A connection that perhaps involved the very land the house stood upon. That night, unable to shake the feeling of foreboding, Emily shared her discovery with Jake. He listened intently, his brow furrowing as she spoke of the shadow Clara had mentioned. "What if it's still here?" he asked quietly, the weight of the idea hanging between them. Determined to uncover the truth, Emily and Jake delved deeper into the history of the property. They visited the local library again, poring over old newspapers and town records. What they uncovered was unsettling. There were whispers of strange occurrences, disappearances and accidents, dating back decades, long before Clara had lived there. The townsfolk had often referred to the land as cursed, and Emily couldn't shake the feeling that Clara's sorrow had awakened something dark. One stormy night, as lightning illuminated the sky, Emily felt compelled to return to the attic. She needed answers. With Jake by her side, they climbed the creaking stairs, flashlight beams cutting through the darkness. The air was thick with tension, the atmosphere electric. As they entered the attic, the music box sat silently, yet the air felt charged with energy. Emily felt a sudden chill and saw shadows flickering at the edges of her vision. "Clara?" she called, her voice trembling. "Are you here?" A sudden gust of wind rushed through the attic, extinguishing their flashlight. They stumbled back, disoriented, the darkness enveloping them. Just then, a faint glow began to emanate from the corner of the room, and they saw Clara's figure materialize, her expression troubled. But behind her, a darker silhouette loomed, a shadow with piercing eyes that seemed to pulse with malevolence. Emily's heart raced. "Clara, what is that?" she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Clara's form flickered, her eyes wide with fear. "It's the shadow. It won't let me go. It wants to take you, too." In that moment, Emily and Jake understood. They had to confront this entity. Together, they called upon Clara's spirit, urging her to find strength within herself. "You're not alone anymore, Clara. We're here with you," Emily said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. As they stood together, the music box sprang to life, its haunting melody filling the room. The shadows danced wildly, but Emily and Jake held onto each other, focusing on Clara. The light from the music box seemed to push back against the darkness, creating a barrier between them and the lurking figure. "Clara, you have to fight," Jake shouted, his voice firm. "You're stronger than this." With renewed determination, Clara stepped forward, the glow around her brightening. "Leave me alone," she cried, her voice echoing through the attic. The shadow recoiled, its form flickering and wavering as if it were struggling against an unseen force. Suddenly, the air crackled with energy, and the music reached a crescendo. Clara, now radiant, faced the shadow with fierce resolve. "I am not afraid anymore," she declared. And with that, the shadow let out a bone-chilling wail, dissolving into wisps of darkness. As the attic fell silent, the air cleared, and Clara's form shimmered, looking more at peace than ever. She turned to Emily and Jake, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice now soft and serene. "You've set me free." With that, Clara began to fade, but not before leaving behind a sense of warmth that filled the attic. Emily and Jake stood together, breathless, the weight of the past finally lifted. But as they made their way back downstairs, they couldn't shake the feeling that something still lingered, a promise of connection that would forever tie them to the spirit of the girl who had once been lost. And though Clara was gone, They knew her story would remain alive in the walls of the Hargrove House, a reminder of the power of friendship and the shadows we sometimes face. In the days that followed, the house felt different, lighter, almost alive. But as they settled back into their routine, a new mystery began to unfurl. On quiet nights, just as they were about to sleep, Emily would sometimes hear the soft notes of the music box playing in the distance, a melody that now felt both familiar and strangely foreboding. And one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the windows, Emily discovered something hidden in the attic that would lead them back into the depths of the house's secrets, something they never expected to find. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. As the days turned into weeks, Emily found herself drawn back to the attic. The music box had become a comforting presence, but there was something more, something hidden beneath the layers of dust and memories that needed uncovering. One afternoon, while Jake was at work, she decided to explore deeper into the attic. She moved aside boxes and old furniture, her heart racing with anticipation. As she shifted a large trunk, she noticed a small, inconspicuous door in the far corner, almost hidden by the shadows. It was slightly ajar, creaking softly as if beckoning her closer. Taking a deep breath, she pushed the door open. It led to a narrow staircase spiraling down into darkness. The air felt cooler as she descended, her heart pounding in her chest. With each step, she felt a mix of fear and curiosity wash over her. At the bottom of the stairs, she found herself in a dimly lit cellar. The walls were lined with shelves filled with dusty jars and strange artifacts. In the center of the room stood an old wooden table, its surface etched with symbols Emily recognized from Clara's journal. They were similar to the markings she had seen in old folklore books, symbols meant to ward off dark spirits. Feeling a shiver run down her spine, she stepped closer to examine the table. Beneath a tattered cloth, she discovered a collection of items: an old diary, a tarnished locket, and what appeared to be a ceremonial dagger. The diary was brittle with age, but as she opened it, she realized it was written in Clara's handwriting. The entries revealed Clara's desperate attempts to communicate with the spirit of her lost family. She had sought help from a local healer, trying to conjure their presence back, but instead, she had unwittingly drawn the attention of the shadow that had tormented her. The diary detailed her fear of being consumed by it, of becoming just another lost soul. Emily's heart sank as she read. The realization hit her hard. Clara hadn't just been seeking friendship. She had been trying to fill a void left by her tragic past, and in doing so, had opened a door to something far more sinister. Suddenly, a cold gust of wind swept through the cellar, and the shadows seemed to grow darker. Emily felt a chill creep up her spine as she looked around, instinctively clutching the locket she had found. It felt warm in her hands, almost alive, as if it held a memory waiting to be unlocked. Before she could think, a voice echoed in the cellar, low and distorted. "You shouldn't have come here." Emily spun around, her pulse racing. The shadowy figure she had seen before loomed in the corner, more tangible this time, its form flickering as if it was feeding off her fear. Panic surged within her, but she remembered Clara's courage. This time she wouldn't run. "Clara, I'm here for you," Emily called out, her voice trembling but firm. "You're not alone. We can finish your story." The shadow hesitated, its form writhing. "You cannot save what is already lost." With a determined heart, Emily opened the locket. Inside, she found a tiny portrait of Clara's family, their faces smiling back at her. Taking a deep breath, she raised the locket to the shadow. "This is love, Clara's love. You cannot hold on to her anymore." As if the locket acted as a beacon, a bright light erupted from it, filling the cellar. The shadow shrieked, its form twisting in agony. The warmth of Clara's spirit enveloped Emily, bolstering her resolve. "Clara, let them go!" Emily shouted, tears in her eyes. "You deserve peace." The glow intensified, and Clara's voice resonated through the room. "I am not afraid anymore," she cried, the locket pulsing with light. The shadow recoiled, but Emily felt Clara's spirit gathering strength. pushing back against the darkness that had haunted her for so long. As the light continued to grow, Emily realized she was no longer alone. Jake's presence filled the room, having sensed something was wrong. "Emily!" he shouted, rushing down the stairs. "What's happening? Help me!" she called out, feeling the energy shift as the shadow lashed out, desperate to cling to its last hold on Clara. "We need to break its power." Jake joined her, gripping her hand tightly. Together, they faced the dark figure, their combined strength radiating warmth. The shadow writhed and twisted, but the locket glowed brighter, illuminating every corner of the cellar. "Clara, you can do this," Emily shouted. "You can break free." The spirit of Clara surged forward, her presence now radiant. "I choose love," she declared, her voice echoing through the cellar like a melody. The shadow screeched in protest, but it was no match for the light of Clara's spirit, which enveloped it completely. In an explosion of brilliant light, the shadow vanished, leaving behind an eerie silence. Emily and Jake stood in the cellar, breathless, as Clara's spirit transformed into a soft, shimmering glow. "Thank you," she whispered, her face serene. "You have freed me." With one final smile, Clara's spirit dissolved into sparkling motes of light that floated upwards, disappearing into the air. The atmosphere in the cellar shifted, filling with a sense of calm and closure. As Emily and Jake stepped back into the attic, they felt lighter, as if a great burden had been lifted from the house. The music box sat quietly, the air now infused with peace. But just as they began to relax, Emily noticed something shimmering in the corner of the attic. It was a small, silver key resting atop the old trunk Clara had pointed to. Curious, she picked it up and felt a strange warmth radiate from it. "What do you think it opens?" Jake asked, his brow furrowed with curiosity. "I don't know, but I have a feeling it's important," Emily replied, her heart racing once more. As they glanced around the attic, they realized that the key might unlock more than just a physical door. It could reveal hidden truths about the house, and perhaps even Clara's story that still awaited its conclusion. Determined to uncover the mystery, they exchanged a glance filled with resolve. Together, they would discover what lay behind the door that the key opened, knowing that the journey ahead might bring them closer to the past and to each other than they had ever imagined. With the shimmering key in hand, Emily and Jake exchanged a determined glance. They could feel that the adventure was far from over. "Let's see what this unlocks," Jake said, his excitement barely contained. They carefully descended the attic stairs and began searching the house, moving methodically from room to room. Every corner felt charged with a new energy, as if the house itself was alive, holding its breath in anticipation. As they explored, Emily noticed a small, ornate chest tucked away in the corner of the living room, partially hidden beneath a faded blanket. The chest was beautifully carved, adorned with intricate patterns that seemed to dance in the dim light. Could this be what the key was meant for? "Here, this could be it," she exclaimed, pointing it out to Jake. He nodded, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. They approached the chest together, and Jake knelt down, examining the lock. It looked old, but the key fit perfectly. With a gentle turn, the lock clicked open, and the lid creaked as it swung wide. Inside, they found a collection of letters, yellowed with age, tied together with a delicate ribbon. Emily carefully untied the bundle and began to read. The letters were love notes between Clara and a boy named Thomas, her childhood friend. The heartfelt exchanges detailed their dreams of a future together, but they also revealed the turmoil that surrounded Clara's life as her parents' health deteriorated and the shadow of tragedy loomed. As Emily read, she felt an aching sadness, understanding now that Clara's love for Thomas had been as powerful as her grief. Each letter painted a vivid picture of their innocent dreams, of a life filled with laughter, of adventures they would have, and of the heart-wrenching day when everything changed. One letter caught her attention. In it, Clara described a secret place where she and Thomas would meet, an old willow tree by the river that ran behind the house. She had written about the comfort it brought her, a sanctuary from her sorrow. But as the letters progressed, the tone shifted. The last few entries were filled with despair, mentioning how their dreams had been ripped apart by the tragic events that followed. Jake leaned over her shoulder, reading along. "This is heartbreaking," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Clara never got to say goodbye. As they continued reading, they stumbled upon a final, hastily scrawled note. Clara had mentioned a hidden locket that contained something precious, a memory that connected her to Thomas. "I must find it before it's too late," it concluded, the ink slightly smudged as if written in haste. What if this locket is still hidden somewhere? Emily wondered aloud, her heart racing with excitement. It could be a key to understanding Clara's story even more. Jake's eyes brightened. "If it is, we need to find it. Let's go to that willow tree." With newfound purpose, they gathered a flashlight and some warm clothes and made their way outside, the night air crisp and invigorating. The path to the river was overgrown, but they pushed through, guided by the faint moonlight filtering through the branches. When they finally reached the old willow, it loomed majestically by the water's edge, its long branches sweeping down like a curtain. The place felt enchanted, as if time had stood still. "Can you imagine Clara and Thomas sitting here?" Jake said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's beautiful." Emily knelt down, tracing her fingers over the roots of the tree. "If the locket is buried here, we need to look carefully." They began to dig into the soft earth, moving aside leaves and twigs, their anticipation growing with every handful of soil they unearthed. Minutes passed, and just as they were about to lose hope, Jake's hand hit something hard. "Wait, I think I found something," he exclaimed, pulling up a small, ornate locket, covered in dirt but still gleaming in the moonlight. With trembling hands, Emily took it from him and carefully wiped it clean. The locket was engraved with a delicate floral pattern and felt warm to the touch. "This must be it," she breathed, her heart racing. They opened the locket together, and inside, they found two tiny portraits, one of Clara and one of a handsome young man with kind eyes. There was also a small piece of parchment with a single line of Clara's handwriting, "Always and forever." Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted, and the air felt electric. The willow tree rustled, as if a gentle breeze had whispered through its leaves. Emily glanced up, and for a moment, she thought she saw a flicker of light among the branches. "Did you see that?" she asked, her voice tinged with excitement. Jake nodded, eyes wide. "I did. It's like Clara is here with us." With the locket in hand, they felt a strong connection to Clara's past, an understanding that transcended time. Emily closed her eyes, imagining Clara and Thomas, the love that had been so vibrant, now echoing through the generations. "Clara, if you're here, we promise to honor your memory." Emily spoke softly, her voice reverberating in the stillness. "We'll make sure your story lives on." As if in response, the glow from the willow intensified, bathing them in a warm light. The air shimmered with energy, and the whispers of long-lost laughter filled the space around them. It was a moment of profound peace, and Emily felt Clara's spirit enveloping them, a gentle embrace of love and gratitude. But just as the warmth surged, the ground beneath them trembled slightly, and a soft rumble echoed from deep within the earth. The atmosphere shifted once more, this time darkening with a sense of urgency. Shadows flickered at the edge of their vision, and a chilling realization washed over them. The shadow that had once haunted Clara had not been entirely vanquished. It seemed to sense their connection to the locket, as if it had awakened once more, drawn by the powerful bond that had been forged. "Emily, we need to go," Jake urged, grabbing her hand. But before they could move, the shadows began to swirl around them, thickening in the air, whispering dark promises that sent a shiver down Emily's spine. "We can't let it take us," she yelled, holding the locket tightly. "We have to protect Clara's memory." With every ounce of courage, they raised the locket towards the dark mass, willing it to break free from the grip of the shadows. "Clara, help us!" Emily shouted, her voice cutting through the oppressive darkness. The locket began to glow, pulsing with the warmth of Clara's spirit. Light erupted from it, illuminating the area around them and pushing back against the encroaching shadows. They could feel the energy shifting, the darkness recoiling in fear. But the battle wasn't over yet. The shadows coalesced into a shape, an ominous figure with hollow eyes and an anguished expression. It lunged toward them, fueled by rage and desperation. "Together!" Jake shouted, squeezing Emily's hand tightly. They stood firm, the locket shining like a beacon in the night. "For Clara!" they cried in unison. As the figure approached, they focused their thoughts on Clara's love, their connection to her transcending fear. The light from the locket blazed brighter, filling the night with its radiance, drowning out the darkness. The shadow screamed, its form dissolving in the light, but it fought back fiercely, swirling around them, desperate to reclaim its hold. "Clara, you're not alone anymore," Emily called out, willing her words to reach Clara's spirit. "We are here for you." The energy surged, and for a moment, everything stopped. The shadows hesitated, as if caught between two worlds. Then, with a blinding flash, the locket erupted in a wave of light, washing over the dark figure and shattering it into countless fragments. As the last remnants of darkness vanished, the air filled with a sense of peace. The willow tree stood tall and proud, bathed in moonlight, and the world around them felt renewed. Emily and Jake fell to their knees, gasping for breath, the locket still glowing softly in Emily's hand. They looked at each other, a mix of relief and disbelief washing over them. "Is it over?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily nodded, tears of joy streaming down her face. "I think it is. Clara is free now. We did it." But just as they began to catch their breath, a soft whisper danced on the wind, almost like a gentle sigh. Emily turned her gaze back to the willow tree, where a faint glimmer lingered, a hint of Clara's spirit, watching over them with gratitude. And in that moment, they understood that while the battle against the darkness was won, their journey was only just beginning. They had not only uncovered the secrets of the past, but had also forged a bond that transcended time, a connection that would guide them as they continued to honor Clara's story, and perhaps even uncover new mysteries that awaited them in the heart of the Hargrove house. With the locket safe in her pocket, Emily looked at Jake, determination in her eyes. "There's so much more to discover. Are you ready for the next chapter?" Jake smiled, his heart light with hope. "Always." And together, they turned back towards the house, ready to embrace whatever awaited them in the shadows, knowing that love and courage would always light their way. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. As Emily and Jake made their way back to the Hargrove house, the night felt different, lighter, infused with the promise of new beginnings. The locket, safe in Emily's pocket, felt like a talisman, a reminder of Clara's courage and love. Once inside, they could feel the lingering energy of the evening's events. The house seemed to hum with warmth, as if Clara's spirit was thanking them for their bravery. They sat together in the living room, the fireplace casting flickering shadows on the walls. "What do you think Clara would want us to do next?" Jake asked, glancing at the diary and letters still spread out on the table. Emily smiled softly, her heart full. "I think she would want us to share her story, not just with the town, but with the world. Her love for Thomas deserves to be remembered." Jake nodded in agreement. "We could write a book, capture everything we've discovered and honor their memory." With renewed purpose, they gathered the letters and Clara's diary, poring over each word. They spent days researching, collecting photographs, and interviewing townsfolk who remembered the old stories. The more they learned, the deeper their connection to Clara and Thomas grew. As they worked, they decided to host an event at the Hargrove House, a gathering to celebrate Clara's life and the love that had endured even through tragedy. They invited the townspeople, sharing Clara's letters and stories, revealing the history of the house that had once been shrouded in darkness. The evening of the event arrived, and the house buzzed with energy. Friends, neighbors, and curious newcomers filled the rooms, mingling under the warm glow of string lights draped across the porch. Emily and Jake stood together, excited but nervous, ready to share Clara's story. As they spoke, they could see the audience captivated, some with tears in their eyes, others with smiles. Emily felt Clara's presence, a soft warmth enveloping her, urging her on. Clara and Thomas loved fiercely, and though they faced unimaginable loss, their story reminds us of the enduring power of love, she said, her voice steady. Afterward, they opened the floor for anyone to share their own memories or stories of the house. An elderly woman, Mrs. Thompson, stood up, her voice trembling with emotion. "I grew up hearing about Clara and Thomas," she said, her eyes glistening. "My mother used to tell me tales of their love, how they'd meet by the river, how the town mourned their loss. It's so beautiful to see their story remembered like this." As the evening unfolded, laughter and camaraderie filled the air, and Emily felt a sense of closure for Clara. The darkness that had once haunted the Hargrove house was now replaced with light and love. But just as they thought the night couldn't get any more magical, a light breeze swept through the open windows, rustling the papers on the table. The music box, which had been silent, began to play softly, a sweet, familiar melody that filled the room. Gasps echoed as everyone turned to see the music box glowing gently. Emily smiled, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. Clara was there, celebrating with them. In that moment, Jake reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "We did it," he whispered. After the event, Emily and Jake decided to turn their research into a book. They poured their hearts into it, and as they wrote, they felt Clara's presence guiding them. They reached out to publishers, and after many months of hard work, they finally found one that resonated with their vision. When the book, Eternal Whispers, the love story of Clara and Thomas, was published, it was met with warmth and acclaim. Readers connected with the tale of love, loss, and redemption. Clara and Thomas's story found a place in hearts far and wide, and the Hargrove house transformed from a place of whispers and shadows into a cherished landmark. Years later, Emily and Jake stood outside the Hargrove house, now a beloved community center that hosted events and storytelling nights. Families gathered on the porch, children played in the garden, and the old willow tree by the river became a spot for picnics and laughter. As they watched the scene unfold, Jake turned to Emily, a soft smile on his face. "Can you believe how far we've come? Clara's legacy lives on." Emily nodded, her heart full. "And it's all because we listened. Love is the strongest force there is. It transcends time, even darkness." Just then, a gentle breeze rustled through the leaves of the willow tree, and they felt a familiar warmth enveloping them, as if Clara was there, smiling down on the life they had built together. In that moment, they knew that Clara's story would continue to be told, a testament to the power of love, friendship, and the bravery to face the shadows. And as they looked towards the future, they felt ready for whatever adventures awaited them, knowing they would face them together, guided by the light of a spirit that had once been lost but was now forever part of their lives. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story.